Okay, so this is the 11 a.m. Saturday briefing for Tropical Storm Beryl. So Beryl was pretty disorganized overnight, but looking at this satellite loop, you can see there's a lot of thunderstorms around the center of circulation. So it's definitely showing signs of intensification, we think. Conditions are still not yet ideal for the storm to intensify, but it looks like it is starting perhaps to do that. It is forecast to become a hurricane again prior to making landfall. Right now, forecast to make landfall as a Category 1, but always good to plan for one category higher, Category 2. There is a hurricane watch along the Texas coast up to San Luis Pass. When we briefed this yesterday afternoon, it was up to Sargent, but that was moved up the coast a bit further. And storm surge watch is in effect for all of our coastal waters and bays, all the coastal areas, I should say, along the Gulf and the bays. This afternoon, the plan is for the Hurricane Center to upgrade some of these watches to warnings. So stay tuned for that. They're going to sort of hone in on the areas of greatest threat, and those will become warnings. Rainfall amounts, we're looking at 5 to 10 inches expected, with local up to 15. This would be mainly over our western counties, closer to the track of Beryl. And then rip currents and high tides are expected, as we've discussed. Here's a look at the 10 a.m. Track advisory. Not too different than we talked about yesterday. The track forecast does seem to have stabilized somewhat over the last 18 hours. There hasn't been as much in the way of shifting around. Looking like the center is coming in now, perhaps just left of Matagorda Bay. There is still some give or take, some uncertainty in exactly where the storm will track and how intense it will be, but it is looking again like those counties, Jackson, Matagorda County, for example, will be closest to the storm center and the highest winds and surge. The hurricane watch there is shown, as I said, up in pink up to San Luis Pass. As you get down to the far South Texas coast, down the Rio Grande area, you can see there's a tropical storm warning in the mix as well. And again, look for upgrades to warnings, hurricane warnings for some areas, and perhaps tropical storm warnings for others with the 4 o'clock package. I did want to show this from HurrEvac. It gives you an idea of the time of arrival of tropical storm force winds. You can see a snapshot there of 6 a.m. Monday. The blue area showing the coverage of tropical storm force winds based on this the center line track and the radius of winds indicated by the Hurricane Center. So you can see the hurricane winds in red, the tropical storm wind area in blue, and then by 6 p.m. Monday it has moved inland. But another thing I want you to note is notice the size of the storm is not particularly large. And so if this was exactly correct, and that's a big if, you can see the tropical storm force winds don't extend that far from the center. So it's conceivable, for example, that Galveston Bay would miss even the tropical storm force winds. But I do want to caution, this is based on a perfect track and a perfect prediction of the size of the wind field. But I did want to point that out from this graphic, the timing of the winds and also the size of the storm. Here's another indicator showing wind timing. When will the tropical storm force winds arrive? Still expecting this to be Sunday night, most likely, along our coastal areas. These are probabilities at a point. So another thing I want you to notice is how the probabilities are much higher down near Matagorda Bay than near Galveston Bay. So again, that's an indication of the greater threat for those counties down there. Here's a look at the rainfall forecast. If you look at the legend on the right, that orange area is 8 to 12 inches of rain. And then you kind of step down 6 to 8, a little bit further east, including Houston, and then 4 to 6 further east still. And so you see that band of heavier rain, that's going to be tied to the track of the circulation as it moves inland. And you can see those heavy rain amounts well away from the coast. So this is not just a coastal event. We are expecting some heavy rain inland. And then the wind too, it should decay pretty quickly after landfall, but certainly the possibility of at least tropical storm force winds fairly well inland as well. The timing of the heavy rain looks to be Sunday night into Tuesday. It looks like Sunday night and Monday we'll see kind of an area of heavy rain with the track of the tropical cyclone. And then there may be a trailing band on the backside of the circulation that continues the rain into Tuesday. So, but that does appear to be the period of heaviest rain, Sunday night into Tuesday. Based on that heavy rain area, you can see the western half of our forecast area is in a moderate risk of flash flooding. This is what we call the excessive rainfall outlook, the chance of exceeding flash flood threshold. So again, the western half of the forecast area is at greater risk on Monday, although really any parts of our forecast area have some risk, whether it be slight or moderate. And then that threat continues into Tuesday, starts to end from southwest to northeast, a slight risk on Tuesday. Getting to the surge part of the storm, as I mentioned, as it stands now, all of our coastal areas are in a storm surge watch for either 3 to 5 feet of surge down the coast or 2 to 4 feet above ground level, sort of north of San Luis Pass and including Galveston Bay. We will see parts of these areas upgraded to a storm surge warning this afternoon. Again, the highest surge does look to be closer to the track of the storm. So look for that update with the 5 o'clock briefing. And then this is kind of important. The Hurricane Center, when they do start issuing surge watches and warnings, they will produce these inundation maps meant to show what areas may be flooded due to storm surge. And you can view these maps either online at hurricanes.gov or using HurEvac. And I think most of the EMs on the call either have HurEvac accounts or have heard of it. But if you don't have it, I would recommend signing up. You can zoom in on your location and get a better handle on how deep the water may be. This particular map is a screenshot of Jackson and Matagorda County up into Brazoria County, and you can see where the water is expected to rise. Some of these areas are marshy tidal zones, but there are some homes, for example, down on Matagorda Beach, I know, where you'll see flooding. And again, these are the low-lying areas, maybe some of the same areas that flooded with Alberto. Now, depending on the strength of the hurricane, there could be an area where the surge is a bit more intense, but this is the best product to look at for tropical-related surge flooding. And then just moving up the coast, here's a snapshot of Galveston County and Brazoria as well, and then areas around Galveston Bay. Not looking at quite as significant flooding here. Again, mostly in tidal marshy areas, but there are some impacted areas, for example, on the bay side of Galveston Island, also on Bolivar Peninsula, and in some of these lower marshy areas. So I highly recommend signing up for HurEvac if you don't have an account. Get into these maps, zoom in, and take a look at the threat areas. Again, these are meant to be reasonable worst case for this event. As far as when the surge flooding would occur, we're switching models now, looking at a different surge model. And this is mainly to show the timing for areas around Galveston and Galveston Bay, looking at the tide levels starting to come up on Sunday, peaking Monday morning. You can see the gray area here is meant to show some uncertainty in how high it's going to get. You can see some of the higher values up around 4 feet above mean lower low water. For reference, the values were 4 to 5 feet above mean lower low water with the Alberto event. So we're kind of comparable to that potentially, maybe even a shade lower than that, but it should give you an idea. And then the subsequent high tides just a bit lower Tuesday morning and then lower from there. Also showing a data point down in Sargent, again showing that big peak around Monday morning. That makes sense. That's when that hurricane may be making landfall. And again, these values may be underdone, but I'm showing this to kind of give you an idea of the timing of when the high tide flooding may occur. Looking now at some of the marine aspects of this, I've got an analysis of wave height from the TAFB unit out of the Hurricane Center, showing this area of really high seas. We're talking about seas, up around 20 feet, even up to 30 feet locally near the center of Beryl. And you can see, depending on the track, how those seas approach the coast with the storm. So the high surf always is going to add to the effective water level. So keep that in mind, that can have impacts on structures as well along the beaches. So again, you can see the timing here, moving with the storm, sort of coming in Monday. Really, some of the swell actually arriving quite a bit earlier, maybe even tomorrow. And then the highest of the seas coming in Monday and Monday evening. Again, a little bit more about the marine aspect of this and the coastal impact. Look at the arrival of 6+ foot seas Saturday night for greater than 20 nautical miles offshore, and then Sunday morning within 20 nautical miles. So we're talking about the marine areas now. Peak seas 20 to 30 feet near the mid-Texas coast, again, depending on where that exactly tracks. And then improvement late Monday as that storm moves inland. Looking at the onset of tropical storm force winds, as we talked about earlier, Sunday afternoon for the lower coast, a bit out of our area, but Sunday night for the bulk of our forecast area along the coast. Hurricane force winds in that right near landfall there, Monday morning or midday for the mid coast. And Matagorda Bay, should it track that way. Looking for improving conditions once again late afternoon and evening Monday for the coast. And we spoke on the coastal flood timing a bit earlier. For the beach, being a holiday weekend, we can't forget about rip currents and high surf. That's going to become more and more in play as we go through the weekend and we get the arrival of some of that swell extending well from the storm. So just to summarize, this track forecast has been more consistent the past 18 hours. We're growing in confidence of a landfall sort of near or south of Matagorda Bay. Beryl is a tropical storm now, but showing signs of strengthening already, and forecast to strengthen to a Cat 1 before landfall. Best practice is to plan for 1 category higher, maybe a Cat 2. Hurricane watch is in effect up to San Luis Pass. Storm surge watch in effect for all coastal areas, and we're going to see an upgrade to warnings this afternoon, especially those closest to the track. Rainfall amounts 5 to 10 inches expected, with local amounts up to 15, and we showed a rainfall map earlier, leading to a flood threat for both flash and river flooding. And I've got Katie on the line too to say a few words about river flooding in a moment. Rip currents, elevated tides and seas likely across all the coastal areas. So again, confidence is increasing, but changes may still occur in both track and intensity. So stay tuned for updates. Katie, can you speak a little bit to the river outlook?
Yes, Dan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're still in the time frame where there's a lot of uncertainty with regards to the hydro impacts. However, I can tell you that we do expect the rivers to respond, especially where we have the heaviest rainfall with near the center of the storm. Right now, looking if we take the current rainfall forecast and run it through our models, we're showing widespread action to minor river flooding, with several locations reaching potentially up to moderate or even higher, especially where those heavier amounts are. This is something that we're going to continue to keep an eye on. Anywhere we see the trends for the potential higher categories, we'll start trying to indicate that with some messaging. As far as timing goes for the river flooding, we would anticipate the river starting to respond Monday afternoon, Monday evening, and we would start to see a lot of the peaks being going into Monday night into Tuesday morning. But the river flooding could extend well into Wednesday and later on into the week.